Last week, we spoke with Brent Randolph. He is the foster parent recruiter for Free Will Baptist Family Ministries in Greenville, Tennessee. Today, we will continue that conversation. You know, I had a client a few months ago, and he was young. He was 19, and he came in with his problems, and he was, really acting out really bad. Yeah. And I went to talk to him, and he plopped down on the floor, and he dropped his head, and he said, "Tell me I'm a piece of garbage. Please tell me that. That's what my dad says." And I'm like, "I'm not going to tell you that." And he goes, "I don't matter." And I was like, "But you do." And it took me a couple of weeks of telling him that every day. And he was like, "Well, you're just going to kick me out." And I was like, "Honey, we're not kicking you out. You're here to stay." So there is that period where if they've been made to feel worthless, and then these people are coming and you're like, "Oh, but you are worthy. You matter. You know, your feelings are valid." They're like, "What?" It's a shock to their system.
And they don't believe it.
They don't believe it. But if you can make it over that bad spot and that hump, and really let them know that they do matter, their lives matter. And because you said the validation, the yearning, everybody yearns to be a part of something. But there is a space that only God can fill.
Exactly. Our middle child, that we got him when he was 8.5. And he is the poster child for not being willing to believe that somebody actually loves him. And we would, even into his preteens and teen years, because, he was 8.5 when he came to live with us. By then, his brain was already wired. And what he believed about himself was set almost in concrete. And he made a statement to my wife one day that, "Just go ahead and stop loving me now. Reject me now, because I know you're going to one day." Oh, wow. And just couldn't, even though surrounded by that. Now, that's not every child. Right. Again, this was a level 3 and level 4 placement. But that it is hard to believe, but they want to see that. And they're justified for wanting to see that. I hear you saying that, but show me. I want you to show that to me. Yeah. Because you're trying to build that level of trust back up in them. So yes.
So I can see, that is a higher level. A child that you would need that. In the level 1, level 2, it is. I'm not going to say minor things, like you said. It's not to like.
The mountains aren't necessarily as big to climb.
Right. Yeah. So as we talked before, reunification is the ultimate goal. Yes. Typically, how long of a process is that from the time that a foster family gets? Is it different for everybody, or?
That's the thing with foster care. There are no qualitative or quantitative, data with specific things, especially in regards to that, because reunification occurs whenever mom or dad, whoever the guardian is, meets the stipulations that the court has placed on them. And so, in the family court, there are certain stipulations, whether classes they have to attend, and then there's the process where they have supervised visits with the child, then they have unsupervised visits, then they have weekend visits where the children get to go back and stay with mom and dad for the weekend, then come back to the foster home. And then when the courts and the DCS and everybody involved, and our case managers, because we partner with the DCS, when everybody has come to that agreement that yes. Last week we had a sibling group go home who had been with the family for 11 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and what a beautiful moment. And there's a picture on our Facebook page of this family, of the teenagers hugging the foster parents. They're excited to go home, but this is another group of individuals that they have fallen in love with, and that's what we want to happen. Yeah. We want the children to be able to go back home, and for the family or the individual who's concerned about, well, I'm going to fall in love with this kid, and then they're going to go back home. If they go back home, that doesn't mean you're done being a part of their life. Right. A lot of foster parents still support the reunification family and still have opportunities, and maybe even sometimes get together with those children, and being a support all the way through. So it's never a situation that, this child comes in, you love them, and then they leave and, you just never see them. That would be a rare occasion. I can't say that occasion wouldn't happen, but that's a rare occasion.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing too, is like the foster family could then be a support for mom and dad, or mom
Absolutely.
or dad or
Yeah.
grandparents,
And
whoever
that would
has
be the
custody.
goal. Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's great. I was thinking as you were talking about the process. Now, I had heard, I don't know if this is strictly through DCS or if this is another state or whatever. After 12 months, the foster family has the opportunity to adopt. Is that right, or how does that work?
No, that is not necessarily the trying to think of lack of words.
Criteria?
It's not the truth. It's not the criteria. That's not typically, again, it's based upon, there's not any set time that after a certain period of time of you having that child, it's all based upon, before a child can be adopted, there has to be a TPR, which stands for termination of parental rights, and that may take months, a year or more. Our middle child, his biological father did not want to release his rights, and so there was a process of going through court cases, time here, time there, to where eventually the court said, okay, that's enough. We're done playing.
Yeah.
We're terminating your rights. And, and then the adoption was allowed to happen. But there's no set time as far as criteria of, okay, we've had them this long, now we can adopt them. That's just not the scenario out there. Again, there's hardly anything with foster care that is a set, other than these are the do's and the don'ts, and this is what you have to do to be able to be a foster parent. But every case is different, and sometimes it might be a short 6 months. Other times it might be 11 months, like this family might go into a year and a half. It typically doesn't prolong because, parents are either going to do what's needed to be done and get their children back, or the court's going to say, you've had enough time. So if a parent is doing, so could a child be available for adoption within a year? They could. They could be available for adoption less than 6 months, depending on the case, of the parents. So, obviously you can adopt through foster care. We did that. But you never know if a case is going to end up in adoption.
Yeah. I had, I'd worked there for, like I said, a short time. It's DCS is a very hard job emotionally, mentally,
Yes.
it's just really challenging. And I found out it wasn't for me. I just couldn't handle it. But I worked on the foster care side, not
Yes.
the
Investigative.
Yeah, not that.
Yeah.
I really don't think I could have done that. But I remember a case, I went to court, and the judge had given her a really long time. I think it was like a year or two to get her act together and to straighten up. And so the foster mom brought the child to court, and the mother was pregnant again and showed up and failed the drug test right there.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't believe it. And I was like, gosh, she's had a year to get her act together. And then she was high when she was pregnant. And I
Yeah.
looked at her in a different way than I would now, because now I work in this
Yes.
with that population.
So you've been educated now with that population.
Yeah, and so back then I was just like, oh my goodness, how could
Yeah.
she? But now I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So now my empathy and my compassion is for her as well. Because she
Absolutely.
has an addiction that she
Yeah.
can't help. She didn't choose. She didn't ask for it. She
Yeah.
doesn't want to ruin her life. And so that day the judge terminated her parental rights.
Yeah.
And it was very,
And
it's just-
addiction, I don't have any statistics to back it up, but we are seeing more adoptions due to addiction, and the rate of addictions among, varying ages is increasing scarily among, the United States population. And we have, a challenge with that here in the greater Smoky Mountain region. Everybody comes here as tourists, and they see the Smoky Mountains, and, but they don't see the stories that we see, and the children that are being neglected in the ways that they are, that are back maybe in those mountains or some of the counties. And so the addiction is one of probably the biggest leading factors for children coming into care, which leads to that neglect. And we've had cases recently that was the exact reason the children came into care, is because the parents were addicts.
Yeah, that's very sad. And like you said, everybody comes here and they see all the pretty parts.
Yes.
All the pretty parts. And it reminds me, I heard this guy one time, he was talking about an analogy, and he said, we look at billboards and they look so pretty, no matter what they're advertising, a new car or a hotel or a casino or whatever, that looks so pretty. But if you'll walk around behind that billboard, the backside could be rotted, it could be held together by, duct tape and all that. So behind every pretty thing there, you've got the good and the bad everywhere and everything. So so is there an age group, I want to touch on this too, is there an age group that it's harder for you to find foster families for? And what is that age group?
If you can go on to adoptuskids.org, and that is the Tennessee state, well, it's across the nation, and you can select a state. And so, like prior to coming in here tonight, as I was waiting out in my car, I went over there just to kind of see, and I went to the site, and you can look, and these are children who are full guardianship. And what that means is parents' rights have been terminated, and so they are waiting to be adopted. But what's unfortunate is when I just clicked on Tennessee and I searched for ages, I believe 11 and up to, I think I did 11 to 17. And there were 12 pages with 12 kids, with 12 cases. Some of those cases are sibling groups that have 2 and 3 kids. So even if each case was just one child, there was 144 children just within that bracket that are waiting for a forever home. And according to the statistics, that they probably won't have a forever home. They'll stay in a foster home and stay in full guardianship and then age out when they're 18. And so, when you get up into 10 and up, it can be a challenge, depending on the home. A lot of homes that have biological children that are 6, 7, or 8, they want a younger child. They don't want an older child. Yeah. And so, I think I would be safe to say that ages 12 to 18 are very difficult to place. But then you have foster homes who have decided that's who we want. Yeah. We want the children that nobody else is going to take according to age. Even if they're 17 or they're 18 and getting ready to age out, we don't want to adopt this child. That way they have a forever family for the rest of their life, because that foster child's life doesn't end once they age out of foster care. And so many do that without having any kind of a support. Now, there are programs within the states that they can extend foster care, they can do independent living, and so the local DCS offices will help them in transportation, trying to help them secure transportation, a place to live, a job, and so forth. But those older ages and sibling groups. Younger sibling groups, not as difficult, but if they're older. So, again, these children that I'm scrolling through on my phone before coming in here tonight, 12, 14, 16, and a high percentage of those kids will not be adopted here in our state.
That's so sad. It's so heartbreaking. And I'm not trying to trivialize or anything, but it reminds me of when people want to adopt a puppy or a kitten. They want the puppies and the kittens. Nobody says I want a 5, 6, or 7-year-old dog.
Yeah.
And it's really sad because I look on Sevier County Humane Society all the time, and I see those older dogs, and it's sad because everybody wants those brand new puppies and the little ones, and it's sad because they all need homes.
They do, and even that brings up the idea that I've talked about and will continue to talk about is so many people today, and it's a great thing. We love animals. We have dogs. My 11-year-old loves dogs. She would have more dogs if I would allow her to. But as humans, we are to care for the animals. But we're called to care for our fellow human being. And there are a lot of people who are choosing to have animals as their children when we have children waiting to be adopted, and they'll never see a home. I'm all for the causes that rescue dogs and rescue abused animals. Those are great, outreaches and organizations. They do a great job. But it's so easy to focus on that because it doesn't really require a whole lot to take in a rescue dog. Yeah. But to go in and to rescue a child, we had talked about the challenges of recruiting. Basically, sometimes I feel like I'm going out asking people to be missionaries, because, growing up in the church, or if you just talk to, an individual, when you say missionary, the first thing they think of is, oh, I'm going to be out in some desert living in a grass hut, or, they always think of the worst scenario. And that's the mindset of a lot of people when it comes to foster parenting. They hear that, because we always hear the negative. Everybody wants to talk about a negative. There's a draw to hearing the negative stories, but we don't hear a lot of the positive stories. And the great thing about Family Ministries is we are seeing a lot of great stories that are happening with the children that are placed within our foster homes that are either being adopted or they get to go home to mom and dad. And so,
I agree. It seems like that, the negative stuff, it's like misery loves company. So if you have one negative person, I promise you, they can infect a whole entire group.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, why can't we
Absolutely.
spread positivity as easily as negativity spreads? It's like it's like an infection or a cancer almost. It's just like, oh goodness.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before that you and your wife are actually foster parents. Mm-hmm. So tell me how long you've been doing that, and what's your experience been like with that?
Yeah. So. Obviously, like any couple, we wanted to have a family. And we tried, and there was no reason for us not to have a family. But we came to the realization that God just wanted us to have our family a different way. And so we had been exposed to some foster children in a previous church that we were on staff at. And so that kind of sparked some thoughts. And so we decided, it was probably about 4 years or so into our marriage, that we would try foster parenting. And so we got with a local DCS in Virginia, where we lived at the time, and went through the classes, got approved, and within probably a couple of days, we had our first placement. And again, we were therapeutic foster parents. We did therapeutic foster parenting for 12 years. And after getting our youngest one, we stopped. But our first was in a residential treatment center, and he was 8. And so our social worker had told us about him and described him, and he sounded just like, a fun kid, other than, there were things in his chart, in his folder, that was like, well, we'll just see. Because not everything that's recorded in a file is actually true. And so I remember going into the residential treatment center where he was, and they took us in to his room, and we met him. And I'm not kidding, his first response was, yes, this is my lucky day. And I was like, okay, what are we going to do now? And his father had pretty much walked away from him. He drove him to this residential treatment center, didn't tell him what he was doing, had all of his belongings in a garbage bag, went in, told him to stay in the car, went in, checked him in, turned him over to them, came back out, told him to get out of the car, some people were going to be coming to get him. And that was it. And he walked in there. And mom was an addict, and she tried to jump through the hoops, but about 4 months in, And we had an open case with her. So obviously they can call their families if they, came from a family. They can still stay in touch over the phone. And so they would call and so forth. And I remember her calling one evening, and she asked to speak with me. And she told me, she said, Brent, I can't do what you guys are doing for him. I've seen the change in his life. And she said, if you guys are willing to adopt him, I think you should be the one to raise my son. And she voluntarily terminated her right. That, a lot of people will look at a parent and be like, wow, how could you do that? For us, that was the greatest act of love that she showed to him. Absolutely. Was being able to acknowledge that I can't beat this addiction. I can't offer you what these people are able to offer you. And so, we got to adopt our very first foster child. That's a rare occasion, but we did. And so then, it just continued after that. And we had, those times of heartbreak where we had a sibling group one time that we had really gotten attached to. And through a series of events, those children ended up going back. And that was difficult. We had younger children that would go back. And those times were difficult. But then we got our second child. He was from a residential facility as well. And my wife actually was the psych nurse at that facility. And she had developed this bond with him. She would come home and talk about this little guy. He was severely neglected and underweight, undersized for his age because of that. So he's just this little dude. I mean, he would probably come underneath the table right here at 8 years of age. He was just this little guy, and their hearts just knit with one another. And the Lord worked it out to where the founder of that organization approved for a worker to be able to take a child. And so we fostered him and got to adopt him. And he was in that facility for 9 months. And so I tell people, I said, that's the closest, I guess, that my wife got to having a child, because she was with him and then got to bring him home. And then we had other foster children. And, obviously, like anybody else, we wanted a baby, but we would take children of a lot of different ages, and we did, and fostered for, years, and then decided that, that probably wasn't in the Lord's, will for us. And we kind of officially stepped out, but then two DCS supervisors that were really good friends from different counties went on a cruise together. And one day, the one just happened to say to the other, said, we've got this little girl that's going to be born, and we need to place her and adopt her outside of our county. Do you know any couple that would be great? And she was like, I know just the couple. And so we found out about her 2 days after she was born. But we chose not to do an at-risk placement, meaning that we were going to wait until the biological father's rights were terminated. Mom had decided when she got pregnant, I can't care for this child, so I'm going to have that act of love, and I'm going to allow somebody else to raise her. And so it was 10 months, and it was a painstaking 10 months of worrying, is this going to happen? Is it not going to happen? But then we got to bring her home at Thanksgiving. And now she's 11 years old. Wow. Our oldest is 31. Our middle is 21. No, just turned 22 Saturday. Wow. And then an 11-year-old, just the joy of, it's different being a father to boys than being a father to a girl. And I tell you what, I love being a daddy to a girl. Yeah. And,
much more protective, I imagine.
Oh my gosh, yes. For the boys, it's like, hey, you'll get over it, but for her, it's like, back away. Yeah, it's a completely different thing.
So I just want to bounce back to what you said about your first one. I started to tear up. I started to get really sad when you said the dad brought him and dropped him off with a bag of clothes. That's so It's such a sad circumstance, but it's better to do that than to take a child back to an abusive, maybe like, who knows what the dad would have done. Who knows how that child would have grown up had he stayed with the dad. So, and then for the mom to say, I can't do this, that is the ultimate act of love. And listen, the fact that you and your wife have done this for many years, can you imagine all the extra crowns and your jewels you're going to have in heaven? I mean, it's like, wow, it's just
They
so
may be a
wonderful.
little tarnished crowns because we've not always made the right decision as parents, but
Well, you know what? You had that love that,
Yeah.
you know, I have a biological child. I've never had a foster child or anything, but I would hope that if I ever did, I would be able to love them as if they were my own.
yeah.
So, yeah.
And we
so.
we have been blessed with a family who has accepted and loved our children, that we've adopted, and they have cousins and, an extended family because of the adoption.
So what types of resources and support is needed after taking in a foster child?
That's a good question. After taking the child in, and I know, one of the things we didn't really get to discuss is the steps to becoming a foster parent, which, could be for another discussion, maybe at another opportunity. But as far as resources, the state provides a lot of support. You have your case manager at DCS. And so say you're a foster parent with Family Ministries. You have the county DCS, then you also have Family Ministries. And our caseworkers become kind of like the lead case leader because case manager, because they are the ones that are on a more regular basis interacting with that family. And so during the summer, say that you've got kids and you're like, man, they need something to do. There are allotments through the county that will pay for your foster child to go to a camp for the week or to 2 weeks or to 3 weeks. As long as the funding's there, you can just keep signing up and, hey, I want them to go to this camp or be able to go over and to do this class or to be a part of that. And so the state helps with that. And if the state doesn't have the opportunity, then Family Ministries steps up and helps with that. Our case managers, many of our case managers help with transportation. They will pick up the child and say, hey, I got this today. You stay home. And so they will continue to do that. They are set up with therapists for the children to go to on a regular basis, support for school, school supplies. That's the great thing about the foster care service. Apart from giving you that daily family support that's needed, when you enter into foster care, all of those other outside resources and areas, they're plentiful and bountiful for you. And there's an organization that posts foster-friendly organizations. So restaurants and stores can go to this organization and say, hey, I want to be foster friendly. So if they come here and they're a foster family, we give them this % off, or we, provide them this. And so there are a lot of resources out there, and that's where your case manager comes in and says, hey, this is what we've got for you. So doctors, therapists, dentists. I know we had a case where one of our children needed to have some work done through an orthodontist, and of course they have TennCare, and sometimes it's difficult finding somebody who takes TennCare for their insurance. And this specific child needed work done, and the closest dentist, I believe, was in Oak Ridge, and this was a child that was not near to Oak Ridge. And so there was going to be the case manager would be transporting this child all the way over to Oak Ridge in order to get this dental work done. So as far as resources to help with the material and physical well-being needs of those children, it's all provided and it's all right there, and the case managers are willing and excited. I speak for our case managers to be able to do that, to provide that.
good. Yeah. I think Dollywood used to do, I don't know if they still do or not, but they did like a foster family day or
Yep.
like, I don't know if
And a
it's.
discount
Yeah, at a
and so forth.
discount.
Yeah, you
that's
just have to
great.
ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just have to ask. There's
Yes.
nothing wrong with asking
Yeah.
anywhere you go.
Yeah, but
because
that-
how else are you going to know what's offered if you don't ask? So.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
what can my viewers do to help? Is it word of mouth? Is it just like talk about it? Is it just like I say as a breast cancer survivor, I always tell women I advocate for mammograms and self checks and all this, and I say education is the key to
Yeah.
knowing when something's wrong, like education. So, is it
Yeah.
like just talking about it? Is it awareness? What is it? That my viewers
I
can
think
do?
first is introspection, looking inward. Can I do this? For your viewers to ask themselves the question, I think the better question would be, why can't I do this? Instead of, can I do this? Is ask yourself the question. So introspection first. Why am I not doing this? And then conversation, talking to other people, sharing it, taking an opportunity to share this on their Facebook, on their social media and say, hey, guys, take an opportunity and listen to this. Did you know that there are 9,000 plus kids in foster care, but there's only 4,500 licensed foster homes? Going to their place of worship and saying, hey, pastor, I noticed that we don't have a wrap around ministry. I'd like to get one started. What can we do? So if you ask yourself that question and decide, I don't think foster parenting is for me, then supporting foster parenting is kind of a no-brainer. That's something anybody can do, and coming alongside and doing that. So introspection, then conversation, and education. Just educating people, researching, because, the more you research, the more you get connected to it. And so, at first, when you first think, I can't do this, but then when you start reading the statistics and you start seeing the stories and you start thinking about it, then it's like your heart starts being tugged to it, So the more we are aware of it and the more people are aware of it, then I think more the hearts are going to be tugged to be like, I want to make a difference. Sign me up.
Yeah, it's just getting that awareness out there,
Yes.
making people aware of it. Because, like, many years ago, I'm sure, even before, Breast Cancer Awareness Month is October. So what did they do before then? So somebody brought that to the forefront and said,
Yeah.
hey, we need an awareness month. Is there
Absolutely.
an awareness month for foster families? Or?
There is a foster care awareness month, and it has just slipped my mind.
Oh, okay.
You stumped me on that one. You got me. I'm
I'll have to look
gonna
that
have to look that one up. I prepared for everything but that question.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, well, we might throw that at the end.
But
in the
there
graphic.
is that awareness of that, and so yeah.
Well, Brent, it has been, like I said, such an honor, such a privilege to have you on, because I like that, of course I have to have the entertainment topic or entertainment shows sometimes,
Sure.
but I really love to have the shows that matter and make a
Yeah.
difference in people's
Yeah.
lives. And, God gave me this platform, and I really want to use it for Him and to do
Yes.
the good things. And, if I can do a little teeny part and bring
Yeah.
an awareness to this, then I want to do my part. But it's been a pleasure to have you on, and
Yeah.
I hope to have you back sometime.
Well,
And-
great. It's been a
and-
pleasure for me.
Yeah, I
I've
had
really
heard
enjoyed it.
your boss Stacy told me about a lady the other day. I forget her name. It starts with an I. She was actually she goes around and gives talks. So I was thinking about having her come on
Oh,
too.
okay,
So
yeah.
yeah,
There are a
Yeah.
lot of people and there are a lot of organizations. There's a lot of people that are out there. And that's what I love about this is that, we're not alone either. So the other day, Friday, I wasn't able to go in person to Jefferson County, but the Jefferson County DCS had a meeting there for all the different organizations that are coming alongside the DCS and to try to support. And we're all out there trying to recruit foster parents. And so we're sharing what's working, what's not working, what we've been able to do, So there are a lot of organizations out there gathering around trying to, rally the information and get it out there. So thank you so much for allowing this platform, because social media is one of the most important platforms right now. Everybody gets on their phone and they flip through something, and social media is one of those areas that I am going to be focusing heavily on to get the message and the education out.
Absolutely. Yeah, all the platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
And TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok is big. I don't know how to use that one yet. But there's a new one called Threads that everybody's using. And that's,
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, I don't know. I'm a Facebook gal. I barely do the Instagram. But thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you
It
coming.
means a
So
lot.
if you guys would like more information on what fostering is all about, or if you would like to become a foster parent or know somebody who would be a good fit for this organization, we're going to put some graphics up on the screen at the end of the show. Just get in touch with Brent or anybody from any organization, and really consider opening your home and your heart to children who need you. And I just want to thank you all for watching today. Join me next week for another exciting guest. And remember to always dream big, because big dreams do come true.